Hey, what's going on, everyone? Dave for Kind of Watch. We've got guys an update on Tropical Storm Melissa, which is expected to strengthen into a major hurricane as we get into this weekend and eventually into the early days of next week. We're also talking about the potential for Melissa to strengthen into a catastrophic Category 5 hurricane, and could it become one of the strongest hurricanes on record? We'll find out in today's video. I got all the details coming right up. Right, so they're joining me here on this Wednesday evening. We have a lot to talk about in this video. We're going to be going over, again, all the latest details on Tropical Storm Melissa, which formed a couple days ago here in the Caribbean, but we are watching it as it continues to inch its way over towards Jamaica and the rest of the Greater Antilles and Hispaniola. We are talking about the potential to see some record intensification. Again, as we get into next week, we really could be talking about an extremely impactful and dangerous system. So I'm going to try to keep this update as factual and, no hype as possible, but we really need to make sure that we keep our eyes on this storm because, again, it looked like it could really pack a punch for quite a few areas. But if we start out here by taking a look at your current satellite and your current look across the Atlantic, we have two things going on. One, we do have a tropical wave coming off the coast of Africa. We are not expecting this to develop into anything as right now, but we will continue to watch as it moves a little bit farther off to the west over the next couple of days. And then obviously we have Tropical Storm Melissa out here just south of the Greater Antilles, looking much nicer on satellite. We'll take a closer look here in just a minute, but that is where she is at right now. You can see a big plume of moisture has pretty much cocooned the storm and kind of just, surrounded it here, which will definitely help Melissa over the next couple of days with that intensification process. But we also do have to the north a cold front that is bringing some drier air down from the north, so we will see how that affects Melissa. Again, as of right now, the models are not predicting this to become a problem at all for Melissa to strengthen. In fact, again, we are talking about potentially record rapid intensification, so we'll get into that in just a minute. But if we take a closer look here at the satellite loop of Tropical Storm Melissa, again, you can see some very deep pockets of rich convection going on here, very cold cloud tops here, lots of thunderstorm activity ongoing across that center of circulation. So the storm is not circulating a whole lot, which means that it's still a little bit unorganized, but it is definitely starting to get its act together again with widespread convection ongoing. So that likely means that we're talking about very heavy rainfall with the system, but obviously also the very gusty winds. So as the storm continues to build a more visible center core, if you will, that's what we're going to be talking about. Again, the first phase of rapid intensification. But if we look right now, again, you can kind of make out where that center of the storm is developing, again, right here. But there's a lot that needs to develop on the west side of the storm. So again, the storm is very young, just formed a couple days ago, but that is what it looks like right now. So if we move things over here to the official National Hurricane Center forecast cone for Tropical Storm Melissa, you can see that, again, we are expecting this storm to continue moving basically west-northwest over the next couple of days, and as we get into this weekend, we are expecting it to hit Category 1 hurricane status, again, right around 2 p.m. Saturday. So by Saturday afternoon, this will likely become a Category 1 hurricane, again, continuing to inch its way off to the west, and eventually it'll turn just south of Jamaica, and it will rapidly intensify into a major Category 3 hurricane by 2 p.m. Sunday. So as we get into late Sunday and eventually into Monday morning, we are going to be talking about a monstrous Category 3 to Category 4 hurricane, again, just south of Jamaica and the south shore of Haiti. So as of right now, we still do have hurricane watches up for the south shore of Haiti, and we do have tropical storm watches up for all of Jamaica, and just recently, Jamaica has been included in the forecast cone of uncertainty for when Melissa is expected to become a major hurricane. So that is very, very concerning to look at, because again, we only have tropical storm watches up, and that shows you how much, or how little confidence, I should say, the National Hurricane Center has, because obviously you'd think, why are they not issuing hurricane warnings right now? Well, it's because we don't really know where the storm's going to go. You can see that the full cone of uncertainty is literally a full 360 degree circle, so it surrounds the entire forecast cone here, basically meaning that Imelda could go in any direction. So it could go, literally, it could turn around and go back over to the east. It could go north, it could go northwest, it could go west, it could go south. I mean, there are so many different possibilities here and outcomes that are kind of displayed here by the National Hurricane Center, again giving us an idea of how little confidence they have in this forecast. So this is subject to change, and we will be referencing to this quite a bit as we get into the next couple of days. Again, really trying to figure out what the system will do. But if we take a look now at the intensity cone here, this is the same thing we looked at, but just all the points are marked here by how strong exactly the storm is going to be. So basically what we're trying to look at here is once the storm hits major hurricane status, we are expecting this to become once again Category 3 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 115 miles per hour, and as it moves off to the west, it will likely strengthen again into a Category 4 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 132 miles per hour and maximum wind gusts of 161 miles per hour. So again, you can see that we do have Jamaica in the cone of uncertainty, just north of where we are expecting Melissa to, hit Category 4 status. So, very dangerous hurricane expected, and there's a chance we could see an even stronger storm. So, we're going to be breaking that down here in just a minute. But we first take a look now at the GFS. We're going to be comparing the GFS, the European, the Canadian, and all of the hurricane models, just to get a grip on where this storm is going to go and how strong it's going to get, because I know there's a ton of hype going on and a bunch of stuff, flying around social media, because we saw incredible model runs from really every single model throughout today. There's been lots of model trends, lots of agreements. I mean, there's a lot we need to figure out, so we're just going to take this step by step, model by model, to really try to just get the best information from what we have out, obviously, from the models. But if we take a look now at the GFS, you can see it does initialize the storm down into the 990s in those millibar ranges. And as we get into the next couple of days, you can see, again, it is expected to turn to the north. But instead of turning to the west, the GFS actually continues to stick to its guns and has the storm turn off to the northeast, away from the Gulf of Mexico, the Southwest Atlantic, and the Caribbean, and it actually does go into portions of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and I think that's a great reason why we still have those hurricane watches up, is because we cannot rule out something like this happening. But we do have a 982 millibar low, so likely a Cat 1 to Cat 2 hurricane, and it does actually get into the 970s. So we likely have a Category 1 to Category 2 hurricane that does make landfall on the south shore of Haiti, and it continues to move north and really struggles to get its act together as it almost stalls out, bringing very heavy rains, so significant impacts to Hispaniola, the Greater Antilles, but more specifically Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And then it continues to move off to the north and re-strengthens, but it races out to sea and gets picked up by a trough. So that's it. I mean, that's what the GFS wants to show, and I mean, it's been showing it for the past 10 runs. I mean, you can literally go back to the previous run and you will see the exact same thing. Again, this is the 12Z from today. That's the 6Z, OZ, and these are yesterday's runs. Every single one has been the same. Okay, so the GFS has not given up on the idea that the storm will go completely out to sea. It will make a landfall in the south shore of Haiti, but it will not take that, catastrophic western path. So that is the more lenient GFS. Now we get into the European model, which is very different. You can see, first off, the European model does not take that northern turn. It continues to move west-northwest, which is the current movement of Melissa. Alright, it does initialize the storm a little bit further south, so that is something interesting to note, but it does slow down the storm quite a bit as it approaches Jamaica, and it pretty much stalls out just south of Jamaica and literally sits there, not really strengthening until we get into Saturday. So this is getting into Saturday morning, and we are starting to see the storm strengthen, again, only down a couple millibars from what we have really right now, so very limited strengthening, but then you start to see the signs of rapid intensification. I know it's so small to see on your screen, it's a very compact hurricane, but we have a 982 millibar low pressure system, again, developing just south of Jamaica, and this continues to intensify, and it does get into the 960s there. We have a 960 millibar, likely Category 2, Category 3 hurricane, which this would be very in line with what the National Hurricane Center is forecasting right now. So we can say that the European model seems to have a little bit of a better grip on what could actually happen. And we, at this point, are getting into the cone of uncertainty and eventually past there into where the National Hurricane Center has not released the forecast. And so what the European predicts to happen is that we do see a much stronger hurricane develop. Again, this starts to grow in size, but also does grow significantly in intensity. And we do see, once again, more extensive rapid intensification to the point where this storm has gone down into the 937 millibar range. So we likely have a high-end Category 4 hurricane and a low-end Category 5 hurricane. Again, literally just sitting maybe 50 to 100 miles south of Jamaica. And at this point, it is just bearing down on really anybody out here in the Greater Antilles as well as Hispaniola. So we really need to watch out for something like this to happen because, again, this is pretty much what is expected to happen by the National Hurricane Center. So we cannot say that this is just, a fantasy run. This is something that could genuinely happen. And it does get worse. You can see the storm continues to strengthen. At this point, it is likely a Category 5 hurricane, again, down into the 930 millibar range, and does get down even further into the 923 millibars. Okay, so this is a destructive, catastrophic Category 5 hurricane. You can see the outer core does make its way over Jamaica, bringing likely some very significant to potentially catastrophic impacts, and then it makes a full landfall on the eastern tip of Cuba as a likely Category 4 hurricane, and then continues to move off into the Southwest Atlantic. But it does also make a dangerous pass to the Bahamas, where we do see some very significant impacts towards some of the southernmost islands. So this is a very destructive run from the European model. Again, you have pretty much a full-blown Category 4, Category 5 hurricane, making multiple direct hits and landfalls on our folks out here in the Southwest Atlantic, and then it pretty much just races off to the north, and that's that. So again, that is a very concerning run from the European model, but unfortunately, it is not an outlier. So we move over here to now the Canadian model, and I will say this has been a very interesting model, one of the most interesting model runs that we've seen really all week from the system, and I guess we'll stay with the Western Atlantic view of this, but in a second we'll have to switch this over to the Eastern United States. But if we look at what the Canadian model shows, well, it continues to bring that storm up to the north, and you can see it is slightly aligned with the European model, where it does slow down the storm just south of Jamaica. But unlike the European model, it continues to push the storm farther west. So the storm does not stall out south of Jamaica, rather it slows down but continues to inch over to the west. And so now you have disagreement between both the GFS, the European model, and the Canadian on where the storm is going to go. Alright, but you have a 987 millibar Category 1 hurricane moving a little bit farther towards the Yucatan Peninsula and over towards, again, the Western Caribbean Sea. But this does strengthen and rapidly intensify into a Category 2 to Category 3 hurricane. Really, as we get into Sunday and eventually into Monday morning, you have a very strong hurricane working its way south of Cuba, and then it does decide to turn north as we're getting into Tuesday morning, and it does continue to strengthen and makes a direct landfall pretty much in west central Cuba as a 965 millibar likely Cat 2, Cat 3 hurricane, and it gets dangerously close actually to the Florida Keys and to the point where we get many outer bands and potentially even that very outer core to slide over the very southern tip of Florida. So this would bring some very significant impacts to both the Bahamas and Florida, but you would see likely some potentially, again, dangerous and life-threatening conditions to central Cuba, again, if we were to see something like this happen. And the storm pretty much plows right through the Bahamas, makes a incredibly dangerous path to the southern tip of Florida, and then continues off to the north. But you will see the run does continue into a very funky little output here. We do get a surface low to meet up with the storm. It moves through the eastern United States. Okay, so this is Melissa down here. Watch as I put this in motion. You get that surface low to develop just off the coastline. Watch as it continues to pick up the storm and basically pulls it north into the east coast. And we do see Melissa continue to strengthen as a 953 millibar, potentially extratropical cyclone, but this is a raging cyclone here, and it does make a technical landfall on the New England coastline as a 953 millibar, likely Category 3 equivalent system. So we cannot rule this out because there have actually been ensemble runs and members that have showed something like this happening, but also it is not too far out, so we really can't rule out something like this happening where the storm gets pulled up into the East Coast. And there have been a couple of models that have actually hinted at something like this happening. So it really all depends on the timing of that storm system that's moving through the United States, because if it does align with the timing of Melissa's passage, we could be talking about potentially a secondary impact towards our folks out here in New England, and obviously that would be very devastating, again, with some very intense rain and wind impacts for widespread areas there. So that is still, I wouldn't say it's an outlier, but it's definitely a more extreme scenario here showed by the Canadians. So now that we're done with the all of the global models, we now can look at the hurricane models, which have been on the more aggressive side of things. We start out here with the HWRF, which is the main hurricane model we look at, and you can see it does a pretty similar trajectory here. It does bring the storm, again, just south of Jamaica. It does slow down and move a little bit farther north, and instead of going or sliding south of Jamaica, it actually does go right in between the south shore of Haiti and Jamaica, but it does continue to strengthen. So at this point, we're getting into the 980s here in our millibar pressure, and it continues to strengthen as it moves to the north. And at this point, we have a 962 likely Category 3 hurricane making a slim passage right between, again, the very far western tip of Haiti as well as the eastern coastline of Jamaica. And at this point, we have once again a major hurricane as we're getting to Sunday. So as we're getting to the end of this weekend, this continues to strengthen further, and at this point we're getting into the 940s, so we likely have a full-blown Category 4 hurricane at this point, again bearing down on the south shore of Cuba, and we do see some nasty outer bands lashing already portions of eastern Cuba, and we get a complete, direct landfall as a 945 millibar Category 4 hurricane, bringing likely catastrophic impacts to the south shore of Cuba, and then it continues to move north. Again, this is a incredible model run snapshot here, but you can see a perfect 957 millibar Category 3 hurricane sitting right over Cuba, again on the 12Z afternoon run of the HWRF. So that is a very concerning run. It is also a very different scenario. So now we have, 4 different scenarios out of 4 different models. So obviously there is huge model disagreement going on already. Now we look at the HAFSA hurricane model, which also has been showing an extreme scenario, and I'll show you guys why. But you can see that it does, again, bring the storm a little bit farther to the north. However, it does not go in between Jamaica and Haiti. It actually goes a lot farther south than Jamaica, and it actually at this point is moving southwest, which is a little bit different than the European and the HAFS, but it actually does align a little bit with the Canadian, where the Canadian actually had it moving pretty much due west, where the HAFSA has it moving a little bit farther southwest. So 2 different kind of paths there, but this is what the latest HAFSA shows. Again, as we're getting to Sunday, it does have the storm reaching major hurricane status, and it continues to strengthen pretty rapidly, and the storm already gets into the 920s. So we have a 928 millibar Category 5 hurricane just south of Jamaica as we're getting into Sunday night and eventually Monday morning, and this continues to deepen, and you have an incredible, perfectly symmetrical, this is a powerful, catastrophic Category 5 hurricane with a millibar pressure of 910 millibars, and it continues to deepen as we get into pretty much the beginning of next week. And at this point, you're getting into a almost record-breaking zone here, where the run ends up with the pressure getting down to 903 millibars. So you have a record-breaking Category 5 hurricane, again, quite a few ways south of Jamaica. So the run thankfully ends with no impact whatsoever, but again, there is a lot in the future of this storm, so if the run were to continue, we'd likely see someone get hit by it, okay? But the run ends with this storm, again, getting so strong down to the 903 millibars that, obviously this is getting into one of the more strongest hurricanes that we've seen in quite a while. So that is a very concerning run from the HAFSA, and if you look at the simulated satellite for that, and I do want to show you guys this for a reason, this is what the storm would look like if we saw something like that play out. Look at that perfectly symmetrical inner core with that, perfect eye there, completely dried out, no precipitation, and then just a absolutely violent inner core and eye wall with the storm. Again, this would be a catastrophic hurricane, no doubt. Again, really, really dangerous looking storm there. But one more model that I do want to look at, okay? And I want to give you guys a warning here. This is a storm, a model run that I want you guys to take all with a grain of salt. And when I say that, I mean it. Because this is one of the most incredible model runs we've ever seen for a hurricane. And it has been pushing definitely potentially the limits of what our atmosphere can develop. But if we look at the latest HAFSB hurricane model, so it's the same model but the kind of the second version that we just looked at, and it continues to move this storm south of Jamaica, so in line with what the HAFSA model was showing. But it really starts to emphasize that rapid intensification. You get a jump from 950 to 920 millibars in just about 12 hours or so. But at this point, you have a full-blown Category 5 hurricane, so nothing different than what we just looked at a couple runs ago. But it continues to deepen past that. And as it's moving southwest, it's getting even stronger. And at this point, we have a perfect 900 millibar Category 5 hurricane. Again, one of the strongest hurricanes on record at this point. If we were to see something like this happen, and it continues to deepen. And at this point, we're getting into potentially a zone where the atmosphere cannot strengthen the storm anymore. And you have a 884 millibar low pressure system. Okay, that is almost unheard of. That would shatter our record for the strongest storm ever recorded. This would be likely bring wind gusts of over 200 miles per hour. So again, this is a record-breaking, catastrophic. I don't know how many adjectives I can use for this, but I could use a million. This is a dangerous, life-threatening, and just record-breaking storm system here. Again, defying what the atmosphere can develop. But this is a hurricane for the record books here. Again, if this were to happen, this is an outlier. This is still obviously the strongest and potentially the worst case scenario. But if this were to happen, again, this storm would be pushing what the atmosphere can develop. So I would not rule out something like this happening. However, I do think that we are going to see a weaker system than 884 millibars. But we can't rule out the storm getting down into the, 890 to 900 millibar zone if we do see, again, the storm go completely south of the greater Antilles, because that is wide open water. It is very warm, and you have very favorable atmospheric conditions for hurricane development. So, again, that is a very, very dangerous looking model run there, but this hurricane means business, and obviously this is a scenario that we cannot 100% rule out. So now that we've looked at all of the models just for where they think the storm is going to go and how strong it could get, we can now look at the European model here for our wind shear, which is basically something that takes apart hurricanes. If a hurricane interacts with wind shear, obviously it will weaken. But if we take a look at what this model run shows, again, you can see the storm just south of a huge amount of wind shear. Again, this is very strong upper level shear in the atmosphere, and this is your storm down here. You can see it's interacting with literally zero wind shear, but you have all of that to the north. So you may be thinking, why is it not just tearing it apart? Well, the wind shear up to the north is actually going to be helping the storm in a way where it kind of keeps it farther south, away from all of this, very unfavorable atmospheric conditions. And it continues to push the storm a little bit farther off to the west, where you can see literally almost zero wind shear is ongoing around the system, and it continues to move off to the west, and that allows it to strengthen. So basically what you're going to be talking about is you're going to be talking about a ton of wind shear off to the north of the system, which could obviously rip it apart. But if that stays away from the system, it'll keep it farther south, which will obviously enhance the strengthening process, but also will also keep it away from obviously those unfavorable conditions. So that would obviously be a very, very problematic situation if we did see something like this happening. I do think that this is definitely a very likely, just projection here of where our wind shear is going to set up. But another thing that's going to determine why the storm, or going to support the storm becoming such a strong system, is because we have very warm waters. Again, the Gulf of Mexico and even the Caribbean at times, they're both notorious for being like jet fuel for hurricanes. Again, we've seen literally your average low pressure system move into any of these waters, and then it just immediately blows up into a major hurricane. And that's why we always need to watch out for when a low pressure system gets a hold of these waters. And the problem is that it seems like we have near perfect conditions for this storm to take advantage of every single ounce of what the waters have. And you can see that we have very warm waters, again up to 31 degrees Celsius sea surface temperatures out here in the Caribbean. That is going to be extremely favorable for development. So in other words, that's around high 80s in your Fahrenheit temperatures. So basically what we're talking about here is widespread sea surface temperatures of 85 to 90 degrees, which is basically bathtub water, and just absolutely unbelievable stuff here. So this is a very, very favorable Southwest Atlantic here for this hurricane to develop, and I really do think that we need to become a little bit more worrisome about the system, again, if it does, or if it is able to take full advantage of these incredibly warm and potentially even hot waters. But we now look at the European model for our 500 millibar height anomalies. This kind of gives us an idea of what the steering currents are going to look like for this storm. And you can see that as it continues to move off to the west, we do see a trough come down from the European model, and it does attract the storm, but then you get a much stronger one to come down fully, and you do get some bridging off to the south of the storm. So basically what you have is you have blocking high pressure in these three directions, and then you have a very strong amplified trough up to the north, which is pretty much setting up the perfect scenario where it takes the storm's ability to move off to the west away, and it will eventually drag the storm up to the north and pretty much pull it away from the Southwest Atlantic. So we continue to run past that, and you can see that is exactly what happens. We see that trough perfectly pull the storm up a little bit closer to the United States. And this is why I will say we can't rule out the Canadian model, the Canadian model's output happening, because we do actually see the European model agree on that trough ejection. However, the timing is a little bit off to the point where we see the secondary landfall happen a little bit farther off to the east, where we actually see it impacting portions of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. And do not tell your mother's cat's father's dog that we're going to see an impact in Newfoundland. That is just one scenario from the European model. But I'm just showing this to kind of give you guys an idea of what model agreement we actually do have, again, between the European model and the Canadian model. Now, one more thing we do need to look at here is the European model, showing once again our relative humidity, which basically shows us how dry or how moist the atmosphere is. And you can see around the storm, it is going to cocoon itself into a very favorable kind of upper level pattern here, or I guess I should say conditions, where you have pretty much just a slew of moisture moving up into the hurricane's path, and then you have a strong cold front on the backside with lots of dry air. That's basically going to cause kind of develop a channel for the storm to go through, where it's pretty much just going to go due north, or I should say northeast, and into the more favorable conditions, and away from the less favorable conditions. And that's exactly what happens, and then eventually moves off to the north. So again, that is the latest output from the European model. We could see something slightly different, but we'll just have to watch over the next couple of days what these model trends look like. Now we're going to be comparing, for the last part of the update, both the GFS and the European ensemble. These are your spaghetti plots or your ensemble members, to show us what or where the ensembles are thinking the storm is going to go. Because again, we've seen completely different model runs just on the trajectory of the system based off of, I believe it was like the 7 that we looked at earlier. But this is the latest from the GFS ensemble. You can see there are quite a few members that again bring this pretty much off to the northeast and way out to sea, but they do allow the storm to strengthen a little bit before it impacts portions of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. However, there are quite a few that do bring this much further south, a little bit closer towards Jamaica, and you can see those more western tracks. Those are the ones that are very, very strong. Those are the ones that do bring this to Category 5 potential. Again, if you see these pinks or these reds, this is where we're talking about those low-pressure systems, again, getting down into the Category 5 range. So all of them do make a landfall here, somewhere between central Cuba and the Dominican Republic, but there's definitely still a very wide kind of mean here with all these ensemble members, so there's a lot to be figured out. But there are even a few that take this all the way out towards the Central American coastline, so obviously a more extreme western path cannot be ruled out, but there are obviously a couple stragglers that do actually take this a little bit farther up the east coast and towards the east coast, so that is also something we cannot rule out. Alright, so that is the latest GFS ensemble. Now we look at the European ensemble, and it is much farther west, and you can see that it actually does not take this through. We don't get one member to take it through the Dominican Republic. Actually, only two that take it through Haiti. Literally, all of them take it south of Jamaica, which again is basically just going to give us the perfect scenario for seeing the storm go Category 5, but quite a few of them take this very close to the south shore of Florida, as well as really all of Cuba, but we see many members, again, take this right into Cuba as well as Bahamas, making very catastrophic impacts, and even a couple members taking this dangerously close to the New England coastline later in Melissa's life. Okay, so this is a very concerning ensemble run here. Again, all of these members showing Category 4 to Category 5 hurricane outputs. So there's a lot to be figured out, but that is the latest on Tropical Storm and soon-to-be Major Hurricane Melissa. Alright, so that's all I got for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you go hit that like and subscribe button, that you turn on notifications so you don't miss out on any more live streams or updates on Melissa. If I did reference Storm to Imelda a couple times, I apologize about that. Imelda and Melissa go very kind of go hand in hand in my head. They sound very similar, so I apologize if I did mix up those two names throughout the update, so please let me know if I did down in the comment section below. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you all for coming to watch, and I'll see you guys in the next video.